Welcome to the July 31st Revere City Council meeting. Could you all rise to salute the flag? Thank you.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Cogliandro.
Here.
Here. Councilor Morabito.
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky.
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers is absent. Councilor Rizzo.
Here.
Here. Councilor Sereno.
Here.
Here. Councilor Silvestri.
Here.
Here. Councilor Visconti.
Here.
Here. Councilor Zambuto.
Here.
Here. And President Pro Tempore McKenna.
Here.
Here. Quorum is present. Approval of the journal of the regular meeting of June 26th.
So move.
All in favor? All opposed? So order. Accepted.
Calendar item number 3, motion presented by Councilor Silvestri that the City Council award a certificate of merit to Sergeant Michael Travato and other officers for their leadership on Sunday, May 28th, 2023. Sergeant Travato's clear, concise command and control directly led to the arrest of 5 individuals who were suspects in the shooting on Revere Beach.
Councilor Silvestri will present certificates of merit to the recipients.
Thank you, Madam President. It's with our greatest gratitude to the brave men and women of the Revere Police Department. It is a privilege to stand before you, acknowledge their unwavering dedication and exemplary professionalism displayed during the events that unfolded on Memorial Day Eve this year. On that fateful night, chaos erupted on Revere Beach. As violence swept through, in the face of terrifying situation, the Revere police officers swiftly sprang into action, relying on their extensive training and unwavering commitment to public safety. From the commanding lieutenant to the courageous sergeants on the ground, every member of the Revere Police Department exemplified true valor and acted with incredible composure. Their response went above and beyond the call of duty, showcasing their exceptional skill and unwavering dedication to protecting our community. Moreover, we must recognize the invaluable role played by the call takers who remained calm, collected while relaying vital information to the officers on the scene. Their efforts in providing accurate and timely updates enabled the police to respond effectively in ensuring the safety of every individual on the beach that night. Memorial Day Eve was undoubtedly struck fear into the hearts of our community. However, it is without a doubt that the brave men and women of Revere Police fearlessly placed their lives on the line to safeguard each and every individual present during their harrowing moments. Tonight, we gather to convey our most respect and appreciation. We are here to recognize the selfless courage and unwavering commitment to the duty displayed by these remarkable individuals before us. On behalf of myself and my fellow colleagues and the entire community, I extend a heartfelt thanks to the Revere Police Department. Your unwavering dedication and sacrifice does not go unnoticed. You are the guardians who protect us when darkness falls, and we are forever grateful. Thank you, and may your sacrifices never be forgotten. In acknowledgement of your extraordinary, distinguished, and meritorious actions, and special recognition is hereby accorded to Sergeant Michael Travato of the Revere Police Department. On Sunday, May 28, 2023, over Memorial Day weekend on Revere Beach, a double shooting occurred. Clear and concise command of the beach, ongoing crowd by several officers of the Revere Police Department, followed by the swift, thorough, and professional investigation by the Revere Police Department, led to the charges and arraignment of 2 individuals responsible for the violence. The actions taken by the officers to protect the residents and visitors that day put their own lives at risk and therefore warrant this recognition. In witness whereof this certificate of merit is gratefully bestowed by our Mayor and City Council in the City of Revere, Massachusetts, on behalf of its citizens this 31st day of July in the year of our Lord, 2023, and the independence of the United States of America, 247th. Thank you, Sergeant Travato. Lieutenant Michael McLaughlin. Sergeant Douglas Zingali. Officer Vu Pham. Sergeant Sean Matthews. Officer Robert Marks. Officer John Papasadora. Papasadora. There we go. Very good. You in this one? Officer Mark Silvestro. I wasn't getting that one wrong.
No, you got that one right.
Wait, what branch were you in?
What's that?
Air Force, right? Air Force?
No.
What branch?
No branch.
No branch? Okay. And Officer Stephen Ahern. Also away is Officer Robert Popolo, and I'd like to recognize the call takers that night, Brennan Kaiser and Christopher Stewart. Thank you very much.
You want to take a picture? Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Give it up one more time. Thank you.
Okay. I need my chair back. Thank you, Mara. You got it? This chair needs help. Thank you.
Calendar item number 4, Brian Dakin of Left Field will conduct a presentation on the new schematic design for the high school project.
State your name and your address,
Sure.
please.
Brian Dakin, 1 High Street.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President McKenna, councilors, for your time. I'm here to provide an update on the feasibility study for the high school project. We know the building committee and the project team has been working the last number of months after we restarted the feasibility study to investigate options on the existing site. That's exactly what we've been up to. I want to go into what's happened with the various options we've looked at, and then a little bit afterwards, I'll talk overall schedule a little bit. And actually, this might be a good time to just put that up now that I'm thinking about it. So one of the slides up here is from a building committee meeting last Thursday night. I think it's a good idea to just have some visuals as I'm talking here. What I will say is, if folks want to look at a lot of detail, floor plans, site plans, et cetera, of this, remember that Revere RHSconstructionproject.com is the project's website. If you Google RHS construction project, it's usually the top hit there. So I'm cherry picking some information that's been going in and out of building committee meetings, and I think it should give the council a pretty good update on what's going on tonight. So what's on the screen is actually 6 options. We were as high as 8. And 4 of those options in the last few months have been eliminated. And the 4 on the left are the ones that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But what I wanted to get into is why I've certain options already been eliminated. Out of the gate, there was always the option of doing a renovation of the existing high school. And in the first feasibility study, we discussed that at length with the building committee. The idea there was to save the field house and the athletic portion of the building that's down there. And by save, I mean strip it all the way down to structure. Any version of renovating that building's right down to concrete and steel. There's nothing left in the envelope of that building of mechanical systems that can be salvaged. So a very intensive renovation, which would have resulted in, obviously, the athletic areas of the building staying where they are and the new academic areas growing out into the parking lot. Those options were eliminated for a number of reasons, mainly the impact to education over the duration of a 6, maybe even 6.5 year renovation, but also the fact that it really left the building stuck right in the middle of a pretty tight site. That site's shaped a little bit like a bow tie, if you look at it on Google Maps, and connecting those two buildings would have meant the trickiest version of site phasing, site safety, impact to the existing building, impact to neighbors. So those options came back. We looked at them, we discussed them. They were eliminated. The other two that were eliminated on the right side of the screen, the two that are called campus. One of the items that we've talked a lot about that I'm going to talk a little bit more detail in a minute is, and this go around on this site, we're really trying to stay away from what we know are cost drivers on this site. One of the main cost drivers is the culvert. That dashed diagonal line you can see running through all these plans is where the underground culvert exists. And to keep this project as economically efficient as possible, we've really been looking at, can we fit the building that's needed without rebuilding that culvert as a part of this project? Now, ultimately, in the last few months, we've found out that the city is engaged with a engineering firm called CDM Smith to study the entire length of this culvert, end-to-end, how it functions. They're going to be in the position, hopefully within the next few months, of releasing a report simply about the culvert. It's nothing to do with the project. It's not a project engineer. It just happens to be going on at the same time. The preview we've gotten from that company is that this culvert is at the end or past its useful life, and one way or the other is going to have to be addressed. Our goal with the high school project is still to keep away from it, to keep these as two potentially separate projects, one that could happen before the other. Theoretically, they could happen at the same time if the work with the culvert was ready to go and it worked with the city's budgets, et cetera. But we're treating that as a constraint on the site that we can't just build over, understanding that it's a 72-inch underground pipe that really, without being entirely replaced and have the hydrology, the pitches of that water on and off the site fixed, there's really no point of just, there's no engineering point of just fixing it on site. So the options on the right, we're putting some degree of school program on the other side of the culvert. On the top was an idea for a freshman academy, separate from the main academic building, and on the bottom was more of a performing arts center. Long story short, those two options were also eliminated due to the similar reasons, even though we're not talking about a renovation here. Our other goal that's a big cost driver on this site is not having to create a whole bunch of temp parking on Ambrose Park or somewhere else. We want to ideally build this project without impacting Ambrose Park. If we build on both sides of that culvert, we're building in the existing parking lot, and we're going to have a handful of 100 cars to put somewhere for the 3 to 5 years where this is getting built. So from a site phasing and cost point of view, those two options on the right were never going to be the most cost-effective options. And more so, discussing it with school staff, school administration, separating the building into two components really wasn't viewed as a benefit. And even Council President McKenna, I know you were involved with those discussions and with your teaching career. There's a lot of reasons that really speak to why separating the buildings isn't the best idea operationally. So it pretty much has left us with 4 options of various heights. What you can tell from all of these is that if we're looking to stay off the culvert and we're looking to stay out of the parking lot so we don't have to temporarily replace it somewhere else, the goal is really to be on the 2 fields that are behind the high school, the baseball diamond and the soccer field out along American Legion Highway. These options achieve that to various degrees. The 2 in the middle achieve it the best, they achieve it via going up. So a lot of the discussion that is going to continue with the building committee is, are we talking about a 4, 5, or 6-story building? And I do just want to say, when I say a 5 or 6-story building, it wouldn't be the entire building. It would really be the major bars of academic space you see on here. So these decisions haven't been made, but as you can see, the options that are 6-story options, for example, the bottom left, is leaving the most site program space. It backs the project as far off the existing parking and the neighborhood as it possibly can, leaves as much space for surface parking, emergency vehicle access, site program, pedestrian paths, et cetera. But there's a lot of work that goes into the difference between a 4, 5, and a 6-story building from operating a school. So these options are going to continue to get developed, and if new ideas come along, they can be added and will be added. But right now, where the building committee is at after a number of months of work and where the design team is at is trying to hone in on, are we talking 4, 5, or 6? How's it configured on the site? How's it fit on the site? And do we check all the boxes that we really need to check? Ashley, if you don't mind backing up, I think 3 slides. And this, as I said, is the presentation. 1 more. There you go, right there. This presentation was from last Thursday night. This is a pretty good view of the existing conditions over at the high school, and you can start seeing the areas that we're trying to really fit this building in to keep it as economically viable as it can. Field 1 and Field 2 is pretty much what we're referring to them there. To quickly address some of the other cost drivers at this site that we had talked about previously in previous meetings, there will be some level of an Article 97 process here. When we were speaking about potential for 3 fields, if we needed Ambrose Park as well, we needed to displace these, that's kind of one scenario. Where we hope this discussion is going is perhaps only field number 2, the soccer field, is subject to Article 97. We have to finish some title investigation with the city solicitor and some of our consultants, but more or less it looks like it's possible that when the RMA was created, the baseball diamond is pretty much deeded into the high school lot and is part of the high school, and the soccer field out near the highway is probably still a park. So what this might mean is if we can keep the building in that area, below that blue stripe, which is a 30-foot setback from the culvert, which is what the engineers are telling us we'd have to stay away from, otherwise we risk damaging it, then it wouldn't function at all. So we're really trying to stay in the area below that blue stripe and within the property setbacks. If this comes around to we don't need Ambrose Park because we're not taking away the existing parking, and if we only have a 1-field Article 97 process, and if we can keep that culvert a separate project, then I think we will be able to get back to the realm of the numbers we were previously talking about. If the council recalls, our initial investigation, due to those factors that didn't exist at the previous site, were that those are all going to be cost drivers. We're hoping that through more research, we can mitigate a lot of those items and really just be on the part of the site that's buildable, and to not have to have the project inherit temp parking on separate fields, replacement of multiple parks up front. Replacing 3 parks, good chance that we'd have to replace them up front. Replacing 1, less so. Might be able to take it offline for the duration of construction and then put it back at the end of the day. So I think we've seen some good news with the culvert. We've seen some good news, hopefully trending in the right direction with Article 97. And we have at least 4 viable options for a building that doesn't have to go above the 4-story mark that we've all sort of envisioned it as. But if we want to pull in off the neighbors a bit, off the abutters, and maximize the amount of site space, considering that 5 to 6 stories is important. So I'm going to take a pause just to see if anybody has any options questions, and we'll talk process and schedule on the other side of this, if that's okay.
I'm going to open it up to the councilors. Anybody have a question? Mr. Cogliandro?
Thank you, Madam President. Brian, thank you very much for being here. This is so important. I'm glad you guys are here. I know you have more of your presentation, but I just, during the meetings, it was, actually, I think the CFO, Rich Fisquet, spoke up about this. When you said that having an off-site building on the other side of the culvert was going to be at a premium. Is that completely off the table now? Because I think that if it's going to cost a lot more money to do that, we should definitely start looking at where we can put 9,000 to 10,000 square feet of an admin building somewhere else or within the plan itself for the high school.
That's a good point, Counselor. So the putting academic space on the other side of the culvert's out. However, all of these options, currently we have to put district admin somewhere. The original idea that you'll see in some of these diagrams is putting it out in the parking lot. Personally, I've been pushing against that because if it's going to be part of the new building, we could figure out a way to put it in the main structure of the building. Also, it could move somewhere else. That wouldn't become part of the high school project, but we really wouldn't need to be asking those folks to leave the existing offices till 2028, and I'll hit the schedule a little bit later. So, if between now and 2028, the district admin is not part of, well, let me rephrase that. If between now and when we're bidding the project, district admin is not part of this building, that would be 8,000, 9,000 square feet of building that would come right out. So putting district admin somewhere is still floating around in these presentations, but if it ends up off-site, it's out of the project.
Awesome. If I may, Madam President, so I'm just going to ask, we talked about Article 97, we talked about the footprint of the building. Where are we with eminent domain?
No eminent domain required. We can fit this building on the site. We think we can fit it inside the culvert, and we hope we can get through an Article 97 process where we're not replacing multiple fields in advance. We're hoping we will get permission to just take the one soccer field offline, build the building, knock down the old building, put the soccer field back.
Music to my ears. Also, construction vehicles, will they be going on and off through the highway? No, none are going to be going through neighborhoods, anything like that?
That's absolutely something that we'll control at the contract level with all the subs. None of us think anybody's going to be going through the neighborhood. Should come off the highway, but those considerations will be a little bit part of some traffic studies, and also the CM consigliere will be helping us out with that. But certainly the goal is to keep everybody out of the neighborhood, no parking, no anything.
And just one more question, Madam President. I don't know if it was at a meeting or within another conversation I had. Is there talk of shutting down access from Cary Ave to the high school?
The way we viewed it is basically any road that connects into that site on some level is fair game, but we don't want to add traffic to any of the side roads. We know that there's going to be access at School Street. We know there might be some degree of access, as there is now, at True and I'm now forgetting the other one. I'm sorry.
True, Cary, and
but
school.
We're viewing it as, for right now, all good ideas will be entertained, but anything that puts additional traffic down into the neighborhood is not going to be something that gets any traction. It's a pretty tight site, so we're trying to look at every road and easement that comes in and out of there, and how could it help, not hurt.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam President. Brian, could you, for people's edification, could you explain the Chapter 97
Sure.
scenario? Because everybody's talking Chapter 97, and a lot of people don't know what it is. We may know, but, I think everybody should have a better idea of what it is and what it's going to entail and whether it's pro or con for us.
Sure. So it's a state process. We call it, you'll hear too many acronyms and shortening of words from us in the business, but Article 97 is state law that sort of protects the disposition of parks, of space that is passive recreation, active recreation. And it really gets down into the nitty-gritty of how parcels are acquired by municipalities in the state, and do they have some sort of, not a conservation restriction. We all hear about conservation restrictions. This is more of a parklands restriction, if you will. So a lot of the projects that we work with where there's a field behind the school, that field is part of the school. If that's the case, the old switcheroo, as we call it, does not need Article 97. Just because something's a park that's getting played on doesn't mean it's subject to the Article 97 process and laws. If it's a field that's supporting the school, and it's deeded that way, it's written that way in the original acquisition of that land, you're free to use it, build on it, not build on it. If it's a park that isn't associated directly at the legal deed level with a school, then there's a process called Article 97 that the state has. It involves more or less applying and getting a delegation to promote a bill that would approve at the State House level a land swap, effectively. Now, the easier versions of Article 97, where we hope this can go, are when you're doing the old switcheroo and building in the backyard, then knocking down the old building, you would propose, well, we have one field back there that's subject to Article 97. We would need permission from the state to take that field offline and then put it back 5 years later. The state could, in that process, say, the field's too useful, your municipality doesn't have enough of them, we think that you need to put a temp field somewhere so that citizens never lose access to that field. So it more or less is a process that protects parks from disappearing. And that process can often, well, used to often not result in expansion of park spaces. If you were replacing 10,000 square feet of park somewhere else, you'd offset it somewhere else. In our experience recently in the last few years, a number of these get subject to replacing at a higher ratio. And that you've heard us talk about ratios before. So if the Article 97 process, the state says you can't take it offline and then put it back after construction, you've got to replace it in advance. They also have the opportunity to say you need to replace it at a 1.5 to 1 or a 2 to 1 ratio. And the less fields we're replacing, the easier the argument is to make. That's where I was trying to note earlier. If we had 3 fields that we had to take offline in the center part of the city, there's a good chance that that process up through the State House would result in the requirement of replacing those in advance. If it's just one field, we hope we can make the argument that it's in the city's interest to put it back and put it back at a 1-to-1 ratio. So really is you can't build on a park without replacing the park and going through what is a lengthy permitting process with the state to get that permission.
So which field would be losing, would we be losing in this case?
Ultimately, in these designs, no field is lost. It's just to build the building out on the fields and then have to wait for the old building to be knocked down to replace the fields is what we're talking about. These designs all support the same 3 fields on that greater site would be there in the end. They would be Ambrose Park, hopefully untouched, no temp parking, and then the soccer field and the baseball diamond would get flipped to the School Street side after the existing building was demolished 2028, 2029.
Is it anticipated they would be the same size?
Yes, same size. We can just fit 1-to-1 on that site. And that's one of the things, if somehow that process yielded a greater than 1-to-1 ratio, we'd have to find somewhere to put some replacement park. But we can achieve 1-to-1 and we can achieve it without being on top of the culvert.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rizzo?
Thank you, Madam President. Brian, again, thank you for being here, bringing us up to speed. And I'm glad, I just have a couple comments, really. There's no real questions. But I'm glad you reiterated, because it's still out there for whatever reason, all these months later, people that live in the area adjacent to the existing high school site are still thinking there's some eminent domain process that's going to be going forward. And I think we just have to keep telling them over and over and over again that is not the case. There's going to be no eminent domain takings. Otherwise, the majority, if not all of the city council, would not have voted for it. So I think it's important that they know that, and thank you for reiterating that. But all this being said, and we're a ways away from this, we're still discussing options and so on, but we can't forget that this is all going to come with a price tag, too. I mean, many members of the city council had issues, not just initially with the site, but with the financing plan. So we're going to have to make sure that we have a solid financing plan that is not going to set us up in a situation where, as I think I might have said this at one of our last meetings, it's a house of cards. You pull one card out and the city has some real trouble. So I know we deal with forecasts and you can't predict pandemics and things like that, but, you know, that is going to be something that is going to have to be talked about, and we're going to have a real solid, workable finance plan. you had talked about, or somebody, I think Councilor Cogliandro had brought up the business office, and I actually, it reminded me of conversation, actually more than conversations, when I was working with your dad when I was mayor. We had slated a couple, at that time, I think $2 million to renovate a portion at least of the old McKinley School and move the businesses' offices into there to create more classroom space in the high school. And I still think that going forward, that's a viable option that we should look at. If they're cramped in there and they're tight for space, I think we should still look at that because, you know, that can be at least, it's not a permanent fix, but it's a temporary fix until the new school is built. So I still think that we ought to be looking at that. And I guess this brings me to my one question, kind of jumping around a little bit, but I've been watching and listening and learning a little bit about the process down at Wonderland, and I'm wondering if you could talk about, you know, in addition to the legal issues that the city's facing right now in terms of the dollar amount we paid for it and what the owners believe they're entitled to, if you could talk a little bit about any additional or unexpected conservation issues or wetland issues that may have been discovered down at that site.
Sure, and actually that's really the only component of Wonderland that the project team is sort of putting to bed, so to speak. Months ago, we filed with Concom to start what's called an ANRAD process that more or less is a local permitting process to identify the current extensive wetlands and what jurisdictions they fall under, local jurisdiction, state jurisdiction, et cetera. That process is approaching completion. It's just sort of a leftover. I can assure you that nobody on the design team, other than the folks shepherding the ANRAD hearings, is working on anything Wonderland. But the hearings coming up for Concom will result in a determination of where are the wetlands and whose jurisdiction are they under. That determination will stick for 3 years and would have to be applied to any future use of that site. And I think the only other thing I could tell you is the more time that goes by, the more wetlands is going to be down there, because probably 6 or 7 years ago, there's less than there were. For example, the inside of the track likely is a wetland, just because things have grown there. Vehicles haven't been there. So that process will be completed in the coming months, and it more or less will result in the city at least understanding, just from a wetlands perspective, where are they, what are their extents, and whomever is going to put a building here, what's the permitting process to go through it.
Okay.
Thank you,
Madam
Councilor.
President. Thank you.
Councilor Silvestri?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Dagan, thank you. And I guess my question, you kind of answered it, but roughly ballpark figure, the cost of the high school is, we just saw going where it was. If the time frame works out to 2030, I believe you said, or a little bit after, roughly.
Yeah, well, that's right now, we haven't started putting hard numbers on these options yet. That's going to start getting phased in the next month or two. And please don't take that as we don't think it's important. It's really that we need to understand the permitting impact, the time frame, the culvert, Article 97, and let the designers sort of ice the buildings, ice the options so that we can really put numbers on them. Our goal is that we try to meet the local share that we were presenting for the last version of the project. Some of those items I rattled off earlier, if the culvert is not attached to this, if we don't have to replace 3 parks in advance, I think we got a really good fighting shot of hitting that local share, $300-ish million. And that's sort of the target goal. Local share meaning total project minus MSBA. So I don't have a definitive answer on that yet, but we are keeping our eye on all of our other projects and the other projects out there, so that when these diagrams, starting in October, so when we're going to kick the estimating into gear, we'll put a price tag on each of these options. Each of the options will have its own schedule. Hopefully they'll all be pretty similar schedule-wise, but we'll try to identify, which ones are the most cost-effective before a decision is made on which option to go with. So the general process here is in the coming 5-6 months, we have to arrive at a which option solution, and then we've got to send that option into a 3-4 month schematic design vet the numbers even harder, vet the design even harder, and then that would set up schematic submission to MSBA and debt authorization next summer. So we're a little bit away from attaching the real numbers to it, but we'll have numbers attached to these options October into November, and we'll be presenting those to everyone as the options are still on the table before the committees in the city have to pick one of the options to proceed with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks, Brian, for coming, and thanks for the presentation. And I have to say, this is the presentation I like the best of all the presentations you've done. And I do like the way it's setting up. Now, you know, Councilor Rizzo talked about the money, and we got to get there some point. We don't have to get there tonight, but we're all conscious of we got to be able to afford this building, whichever it is, when we're done. I want to congratulate you on your explanation for Article 97. It was very good tonight.
Thank you.
We won't get into the weeds, but there are some problems further along with Article 97 right now.
There's a lot of weeds in that process.
The changes in the regulations have gotten really tough, and
Yep.
my other life, I'm dealing with some of them right now. So there's going to be a challenge, but it looks like we're in pretty good shape the way this is shaken out, and so I'm impressed. And if I have 2 cents, I like the 6-story building, but that's only my piece of it. But I like giving the neighbors more space. And I think the other thing that we did tonight is dispel the rumor that we're taking anybody's houses around this high school. There's no eminent domain. I want to say it a couple times. No eminent domain, because it's still going out there, and it's strong. And people say, "Oh, you're lying," or "You make." Nope. Yeah, we heard it. So, just for the edification of the viewing audience, no eminent domain. We're not taking anybody's property in that neighborhood, and we're going to hopefully make it better than it is now for them. And that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Visconti?
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks, Brian, for being here. Couple of quick questions. The extra building for the administration, would that be
Reimbursable?
reimbursable?
No. If it was part of the
So-
project, 100% on Revere's dime, not reimbursable at all.
Okay.
If it's not part of the project, then, yeah, it's not part of the project. yeah.
So even if it was in the,
Even if it was in the building.
okay,
They would prorate that square footage as not reimbursable.
and not reimbursable. Great, and I guess I'm happy to hear. It's nice to hear some of the progress being made, obviously, and some of the good news, and obviously there are ifs, but like my fellow colleague said, it's great to hear that, no houses are being taken, because we wouldn't have voted for it if that was the case. So it's great to see that that's been cleared up, and people around that area don't have to worry about that. And the fact that we're trying to make the concessions in order to try to give them as much room as possible. So if that means going up a little bit, we do that. But thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to more information to come.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Morabito?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Dakin, for being up.
Not a
Not
doctor.
Dr. Dakin, I'm sorry. I just seen your dad
Nowhere near
last
the
week.
amount of
Sorry
college to
about
be a
that.
doctor.
Brian. Mr. Dakin, so I know the cost of building a new high school was weighing on all of our minds. It may be far-fetched to give us an estimate at this point, because a lot can change from now until the summer. But what are we looking at for a cost as of right now?
We're going to be trying to keep Revere's portion to the $300 million target. That translates into a total project cost somewhere in the middle of the 400s, $400 million. And that's about what we were looking at, minus land acquisition at the previous site. The cost of the building, to some degree, is the cost of the building. We're trying to, as every decision is brought back up We're trying to make the most cost-effective decisions as we get there. And I can assure you that when we get into the estimating process, a big part of that process is for the design team, ourselves, and the contractor to propose alternates in the design to refine the cost. So the two biggest drivers of any construction project are square footage, which more or less hasn't changed. The building's the size of the building, with the exception of this district admin debate. And then site work. Site work's a massive cost driver. It's not fully reimbursed by the state, by the MSBA. They have a complex formula of how much they'll give you for site work. And we do have less acreage here, but we have acreage with a little bit of baggage. We got to know what's going on with that culvert, et cetera. And when you've heard me say, I think we have a really good chance at having a project in the lower part of the 400 million range and maintaining that 300 million or under Revere share, that would take victories in terms of we don't have to move the culvert, we don't have to build temporary fields, we don't have to build temp parking. That's all site work that Revere is going to pay 100% for. So those cost premiums can really get the total project budget if they start to pile up. And we're trying to design this and approach the permitting process in a way that those premiums don't exist, and we can hopefully beat the cost that we saw last time. But a lot of things have to fall in place for that to happen.
You were speaking about alternates in design. One of the things you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, something about geothermal design. Is that still in the picture? Because I thought that was kind of a cool feature.
Yeah, the baseline assumption is yes. It was a little easier to implement geothermal at Wonderland because there's more space. We aren't throwing away the geothermal idea, and it can be achieved. I think we just have to work a little more with the engineers of where is that field of vertical wells. Most of it probably would be under the building. These are all sealed systems anyway. There's no underground maintenance. Everything, the head end of the unit that's pumping all that is what you need to maintain. That's up in the building. But can it fit? Is it still in the picture? Yes. But we have less places to put what amount to a few hundred wells being drilled to pump that fluid.
Can you just explain that to everyone who's here, that design?
Yeah, geothermal is a more traditional heating and cooling in buildings is done by rooftop units, large boilers in mechanical spaces, things on roofs. Geothermal is really trying to harness the warmth, the comparative warmth or coolness of underground, the earth. It's a number of sealed wells that get drilled, and treated fluid gets pumped through those. Again, it's all sealed. And in the winter, what the building is doing is it's circulating all that liquid underground and pulling heat up. In the summer, it's circulating liquid underground and pulling cool up. So it's always trying to do the opposite of what the air temperature is doing. So it's a very efficient system. There is an upfront cost, but they're some of the most efficient buildings of this size from a monthly utility bill and energy consumption perspective are geothermal. And that's why geothermal is appealing.
More cost-effective in the long run.
More cost-effective in the long run, a little more upfront, and you got to find a place to put a whole bunch of wells underground.
Okay. Fields remain in the same spot, right?
Yeah, fields would be flipped to the opposite side of the building, but yes.
To the opposite, but same size. And no eminent domain.
No eminent domain.
Just want to clarify that again. That seems to be the message out there. And the likelihood of MSBA approving the schematic design.
So good question. I forgot to mention the MSBA. MSBA approved a feasibility study extension that gets us out to a schematic design submission for next June's board meeting. Now, they need that in advance of June, so we might have to look at the schedule after an option is selected this winter and after schematics completed. We'll be pretty close to it, but MSBA extended the feasibility study to June. It was the third extension request they've granted. And if all the ducks line up and the committees and the cities all behind a project here, I don't really see much risk in the MSBA being the one to pull the rug out from under the process. The impression I get based on all the meetings we've had with them is they really want to see this school get built.
And are we very hopeful with that MSBA will give a good portion?
They've end of last year, they upped their reimbursement. There's some rumors out there that I hope the executive director's not watching, but there's rumors out there they might do it again. Understanding what's happened in cost in construction. So we've got a runway in front of us before we're really doing a debt authorization vote, which would be, height of next summer. And then we're still a year out from building it. So we hope that there's enough time in there for any reaction that the MSBA is going to have to the construction economy for this project to take advantage of it.
And one more question, is this union built?
Yes, there will absolutely be union contractors on the site, the CM signatory to the Carpenters Union, other places. It's on these CMR projects, it often doesn't mean every single vendor or subcontractor is union, but there will be a massive effort made to make sure that all the major trades are. The filed sub-trades are all going to be bid publicly. All the big shops are going to go after them, but most often on these construction manager at risk projects, we see a mix. So I just want to be clear that it's highly unlikely that through the public bid process, you end up with all union shops. Being that there's that competition in the bid market, you really can't pass up a filed sub-bid that's low because they're an open shop. But our CM knows how to work with this. If this is a topic that the council would like to hear more about, I know they could speak a lot more eloquently than I could on it, and we can bring them to a future meeting. So to go through the
Absolutely.
details. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Cogliandro?
Thank you for the leeway, Madam President. Brian, just one more question. When will this council need to vote first?
So that might be a good point for me to just hit what I wanted to go through the rest. So the progress that we were looking at on the screen and these options is going to continue for the next couple of months, call it August, September. September into October is when we think we should know enough about the permitting path ahead of us, and the designs are set enough to start estimating and creating real schedules. So by the time we're looking at Thanksgiving, December into January, we'll have any of the options that are remaining and haven't been eliminated with price tags, with schedules, with a full presentation. We need one of those options selected this winter, most likely January. And then we need, so that's really the next major decision point, would be the city council potentially affirming which option the building committee would like to build. That would then need to go through a schematic design process that we probably 3-4 months takes us out into next spring. We would then need a vote to submit that schematic design to MSBA. MSBA next summer, July-ish, would send back a project funding agreement. That project funding agreement, July, August, is when the actual debt exclusion vote of this council would have to occur. So pick the option, January, this winter. Affirm the option after schematic design, June next year. Debt authorization, including the actual offer back from the MSBA on the exact dollar value they'll contribute, July, August next year.
Thank you. And the reason I ask that is you may want to pencil in an extra meeting for January because this council is going to look very different next year.
Yep. Yeah, and actually, Council President's been helpful with feeding me some of the dates. So even just a lot of the presentations late this year, I understand there's an election. I know people's schedules are going to be challenged, and your schedule is always full. So we're going to be, as this information is developed, finalized, presented, we want it in front of you, not on the night we're looking for a decision on.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam President, for the latitude. Brian, one quick question. What about our requirement to concentrate on hiring Revere people in the contracting field while this is being built?
I'm going to make a quick note. That's another one that I would like to invite Consigli back. They've dealt with that sort of idea a lot in the past. They can present how it could happen, pros, cons, et cetera. And the good thing is that that's actually something we have a long runway in front of us to figure out, because we're probably not bidding any work probably out until the end of 2025, something like that. And really when those ideas have to be put in place is when we're actually going out to get subcontractors.
I just want to keep that in front so we don't forget our Revere people to go to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Permission to speak from the chair, please? So I just want the public and the council to know that Mr. Dakin will be up here monthly, giving his monthly update on what we discussed on the building committee. So you'll see him every month. Just wanted to say, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dakin. Are you finished, or?
Yeah, I think so. I just didn't hit, I might have said it, I'm just looking at the back end of my schedule notes. So if we can hold that approval process that I just said that lays out to a debt authorization about next summer, right now, we think that translates into shovel in the ground at some point in 2025, middle of 2025, opening a new school in 2028, the beginning of the school year, and then end of 2029, having all the old building knocked down and field. So if we can hold this front end of the schedule, we think opening a new building August, September 2028 is the goal, but keep in mind, we then have an old building to knock down. It'd take another 12, 14 months to get the old building out of the way and build the park. So those are the dates we're looking at right now.
Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Calendar item number 5, public hearings. Hearing called is ordered on an ordinance further amending the zoning ordinances of the City of Revere relative to lodging houses and rooming houses.
This is a public meeting. Proponents? People in favor? I'm going to close that side. Opponents? People not in favor? I'm going to close that side. City councilors? Anybody? Okay. We're going to refer to zoning.
Calendar item number 6, hearing called is ordered on the application of Overlook Ridge LLC, care of Veris Residential, Harborside 3, Hudson Street, Jersey City, New Jersey, requesting an amendment to the revised zoning ordinances of the City of Revere relative to casual restaurant use in the Overlook Ridge Overlay District.
This is a public meeting. We're going to open it up to proponents. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Hi there, my name is Jennifer Schultz, and I am Permitting and Land Use Counsel for the proponent who is owner of the property, Veris Residential. And with me tonight, Bob Button from CDM Smith Engineer, and then 2 representatives from the owner are also here and happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. A short presentation for the council this evening, and thank you for having us and allowing us to speak for just a few minutes and then answer any questions. So we're here this evening because we are very happy that we are beginning the final stage in the Overlook Ridge development, spanning at least 2 decades, if, I don't know where Bob went. Yeah, there he is, if not more. And there are 4 lots that are remaining to be developed. There are 2 lots in Revere, so-called Lot 1 and Lot 15, and then 2 lots in Malden over the line. And I'll show you, there we go. You can see up on the screen an aerial shot with the 4 lots remaining outlined in red. I would say sort of screen left is the Malden side, screen right, the Revere side, and then in the master plan itself, you can actually see in site plan form where Lot 1 is L-shaped, nestled around the firehouse, and Lot 15 on the far upper left-hand corner reaches of the plan, and then down in Malden, lots 13 and 14 on either side of Overlook Drive. And so the master plan actually that you see up on the screen right now is the plan that was recently updated and reviewed and recommended by the Joint Task Force earlier this summer. And there's a parallel process going on in Malden right now for a zoning amendment to kickstart that process on the final redevelopment of lots 13 and 14, although you see them split up here as 14A and 14B as a phased redevelopment. And so the zoning amendment that we have pending and have proposed before the council this evening is at its highest level, and I'll move on to sort of a rather dense zoning slide next, but before I do that, I'll try and say it in just a couple sentences, is to make sure that what is proposed and shown, and I'll have some close-up pictures on Lot 1, can be built and that the owner can proceed. It is shown as two standalone, relatively small retail F&B establishments, one proposed as a coffee shop, the other proposed as a casual restaurant, sort of a category in between a more formal table service and a fast food. And so it is neither of those, and so the proposal is to create a new category akin to something like a Chipotle, where the food is made to order to each consumer's specifications and requests, as opposed to, the number 5 or whatever. And so what we're asking for with I'll start with 15 because I think that's the order of our slides coming up. And I don't expect anyone to be reading this off the screen right now. This is a copy of the table that was included in our application for the zoning amendment. So for Lot 15, which is proposed as a multifamily residential development, the only zoning relief being sought is actually a shift in the parking. Right now, what's required is 2 spaces per dwelling unit, and we are requesting 1.75 spaces. And what that would do is it would make it commensurate and the same as the parking ratios that are currently required and being utilized for all of the other buildings and development that has preceded the remainder of the build-out. And so it is lower than what's currently in the zoning code, but would make it consistent with all of the other residential buildings that are on the site thus far. And so that's the only zoning relief, in fact, that we are asking for Lot 15, the multifamily residential lot. And just seeing it here in site plan, the sort of winding building with parking in purple behind, amenity space, green spaces, a pool sort of nestled into the center there, and then a conceptual rendering of one view of what Lot 15 would look like when ultimately built out. And I should note for both Lot 15 and Lot 1, if we are able to be successful in the zoning amendment process, we would then enter into we presume, robust site plan review process for the ultimate design and any impact analysis and ultimate mitigation required for the build-out of both of these lots. So just moving quickly on to Lot 1. Again, this is what is being requested, the zoning table that was included in the amendment that we proposed. And so for the zoning relief for Lot 1, what is required is to allow retail that is standalone. Right now, retail in this district must be connected to a hotel and cannot stand on its own. And 2, for that retail right now, it is maximized at 5,000 square feet, and we are requesting that it be allowed to be built up to 6,000 square feet. The coffee shop being proposed would be significantly smaller than that, and the casual restaurant would be just over that as it's currently conceptualized, approximately 5,300 or 5,400 square feet. So the request for 6,000 is just a small buffer in that respect. And then, as I noted before, the creation of a new concept of retail or F&B, where right now the zoning only conceptualizes restaurant as a sit-down table service, and so this is to create that new mid-category. And so just very quickly, the site plan showing how it wraps around the existing firehouse. And then the 2 retail spaces, restaurants, the smaller to the left, the coffee shop, the slightly larger to the right, proposed as the casual counter service restaurant. And then finally, a rendering of what it would look like, seeing that firehouse in the foreground, and then the 2 standalone retail establishments in the background. And I will leave it on the master plan, and myself and all of my colleagues I am here with are happy to answer any questions.
Proponents, anybody would like to speak? Proponents? Proponents. Okay, we're going to end that. Opponents? Come on up here. State your name and address for the record.
Celeste Souza, 19 Overlook Ridge Terrace, Unit 124. Hi. I'm currently a resident at Overlook Ridge on the Revere side. And I just have some concerns about the overall project, but specifically, I know we're here to talk about the parking and the casual restaurant use. Just concerns about parking in general. Recently, they had to take away visitor parking to make room for more resident parking. So I do have concerns about the 2 to 1.75 reduction, because we currently have the 1.75 parking spaces per unit, and that is already a struggle at our complex, especially since post-COVID. There's been more people who've moved back into the community, which is great, but parking has been hard. And then never mind, you take away visitor parking, people do like to bring visitors over, and then sometimes even residents have to park in visitor spots. So it has been an issue at the community, and I can only see it getting worse with building an additional building at our complex. And then to bring in two commercial retail spaces, that could also bring in additional issues with parking, because those parking lots look small, and I'm not sure how many people would be allowed in a 6,000 square foot retail, casual restaurant use, but that will bring additional traffic into the community. And I do have concerns about traffic, parking, safety of our residents, and bringing additional personnel into the community.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll have one more
Okay.
question as well. I know the city of Malden, in their plans, they do have the proposed bringing back the bus shuttle as part of their traffic concerns. I don't know if the council here is considering that on the Revere side, and they also had to table their discussion a few weeks ago to gather more information. So I'm just not sure if the Revere side is communicating with the Malden side and how that works, or if I'm allowed to ask that question here. But I just want to make sure that how the towns are in communication, as our complex is clearly divided by the two town lines, but this community really is segregated from the rest of Malden and Revere. I know it will be opened up once they build the Route 1 entrance and exit, but as of right now, the only people that really go into our community are us residents who live there.
Thank you. Opponents? State your name and address for the record, please.
Ralph DeChico, 49 Washington Street. I'm going to go back a long ways with this Overlook Ridge project. I believe Councilor Rizzo, I'm not sure if you were the ward councilor at the time, if it was Councilor Patch and Councilor Serino, you've been involved with Overlook Ridge. They've reneged on a lot of issues at this project. We've been having to hold a hand over the fire for everything going on over there, things that they were supposed to do. I'm totally opposed to this project. Once again, they're reneging on the hotel on the Revere side to change this so that it's stand-alone restaurants. I am opposed to this because they should have put what they said they were originally going to do when they proposed this entire project way back in the day. Revere was going to get a hotel in that area. It should not be standalone restaurants. They should put the hotel. Revere has gotten nothing but residents, residents, and residents. We needed the commercial impact of a hotel on that site. That's the plan they should stick to, and that's the only thing that should be approved for that site. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? We're going to close that side. City councilors? Councilor Silvestri? Okay, I'm sorry. Councilor Serino, sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Ms. Souza for coming up and Mr. DeChico as well. Actually, Madam Clerk, could you turn the mic off on so no feedback? Thank you. Ms. Souza brought up a point, before I get into the proposal, I was unaware that Overlook is seeking or has taken away visitor parking recently, because that kind of changes my perspective a little bit. My perspective had been, the 1.75 ratio had been working throughout, but clearly if they've removed visitor parking, that's concerning to me, because like I said, I figured if the 1.75 had been consistent and working, then, make it consistent. And then Ms. Souza had also mentioned the shuttle, which I know had been brought up in the Malden side of this conversation. And the shuttle basically was a free shuttle for residents of Overlook Ridge to take them from Overlook to downtown Boston. And I believe it was part of the original negotiation. Maybe Councilor Rizzo would remember, but there was something back then when Overlook was first proposed that would create this shuttle to have residents in this amenity, which is why some residents actually chose to live at Overlook, because it gets cars off of the roads and whatnot. Mr. DeCicco brought up the hotel, and as I had mentioned to Overlook in earlier conversations, the hotel, I knew once it got up here, was going to be a concern of the council. I do understand, and I'm excited about the prospect of a coffee shop and a small, the coffee shop and a small restaurant. However, the hotel would have been ideal, but I think Overlook might be able to explain why they changed that plan and are going back on that. The other point I want to make that Overlook did not really discuss in their presentation was, with this final phase of the project, a couple of things. The entrance to Overlook Ridge on Salem Street and Overlook Ridge Drive will be totally reconfigured, and they're working with MassDOT. Once this final phase goes into effect, they're working with MassDOT to reroute the Route 1 on-ramps and off-ramps right at the corner there by Linden Block, right at the next intersection, which I believe would help to decrease traffic along Salem Street. So that's one positive of this. And another thing I wanted to bring up was that there's actually a net decrease in apartments and residences at the Overlook site compared to what was originally approved. And it's important to remember that this is the last phase of the project. We are not approving a new apartment building or something that hasn't been discussed before. This is the last phase. This was always supposed to be. What wasn't supposed to be was the hotel. So I want to learn a little bit more about the fact that we've lost visitor parking, and I'm hoping Overlook can speak to that, as well as if Overlook can speak to the transportation improvements that would come along with this. But I think now, after hearing some of these things, maybe we do need to take a deeper dive into this. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Silvestri?
Thank you, Madam President, and I'd like to thank the residents for coming up here tonight as well. I actually received a few phone calls just a few weeks ago by a resident of Overlook who mentioned the slow and progressive taking of visitor parking. Maybe someone come up and address that because it's also the resident who mentioned it this evening, and then a few phone calls. So is there a reason why we're removing visitor parking from Overlook? Is it to fit this project and to make it into the design?
Come up and speak. Yes.
Thank you, councilors. So the odd scenario that we find ourselves in is that there's no longer one owner at Overlook Ridge, and so within the last couple of years, a few of the buildings, including the one where Celeste lives, is not owned by the Veris team, or actually the team. It's not owned by any of the owners that have control over the remaining lots. And so I was just speaking with the ownership team, and they said they are not aware of any of their buildings, removing visitor spaces, and certainly understand why that would be a concern. But given that they certainly know how to contact all of the other owners, they will they will raise those questions, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow, and find out what is going on so that we can make sure that that information is shared not only with the residents and the public, but with the city council as well. And one other item, just to respond to some other questions, I am happy to report that the shuttle service is back. And so that is something that the two remaining owners have brought back again, even though they do not control all of the buildings on the site anymore. They have agreed that they would bring the shuttle service back. We're told that it is now up and running, perhaps as recently as today. That they, are committed to doing everything that they can in their control, knowing that they need to coordinate with some of the other owners and can't force the owners of the other buildings to do something that they are unwilling to do.
Thank you. We're still in the council. You can speak in 2 minutes. Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So I know that some of you have indicated that I was a counselor, one of the counselors that was here when this project began. And this is the problem that I have when we discuss projects. We get this great master plan, we're told, we're promised all of these things, and then, 5, 10, 15 years later, what we have and what we were promised are two different things. So I believe this city, when we approve any certainly large-scale developments like we did with Roseland Properties back in the day, there's got to be some binding agreements where the city has options to either apply fines or some other measures so that these large-scale developers keep their promises to the city. One big promise that's been a sticking point for me forever, and I believe probably for the majority of our residents, is the traffic that flows in and out of that site. We were promised back in the time, and I believe Councilor Zambuto was here at the time as well, and he may speak to it if and when he does speak on this matter, but we were promised a complete reconfiguration of Route 1, that the developer was going to take on that expense and have access and egress to and from Route 1. In fact, they had promised us a diamond interchange that was going to allow traffic to leave that site and actually head southbound on Route 1. We've seen none of that. And so what we do see is Route 1 backed up further than it ever has been backed up before, each and every night. So, when a developer comes in and proposes a plan for a development like this, the city has to make sure that we're protected and that our residents are protected. As for the project itself, what we're talking about, a couple of casual restaurants, they're commercial entities, and typically I am always a proponent of commercial entities. It's a little discouraging now to hear that there's some parking issues up there that, quite honestly, I wasn't aware of until we just heard it a few minutes ago. I guess my question would be, is it a deal breaker for these restaurants or the coffee shop if we do not approve the lowering from 2 to 1 to 1.75? Is that going to be some sort of a deal breaker for these entities that are looking to construct these facilities? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morabito. Oh, Councilor Novoselsky. Oh.
Someone answer the question. Is it a deal breaker if we do not approve the 2 to 1 to the 1.75?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Button, CDM Smith, 75 State Street, Boston. Councilor Rizzo, I believe that parking affects the residential development and not the coffee shops, that the coffee shop parking is not being reduced. The reduction from 2 per unit was associated with the residential housing. And I believe that the correct parking numbers are being presented for the coffee shop and the small retail on Lot 1. The parking change was associated with Lot 15. So that's one question I wanted to answer for you. With respect to the highway, that's in part why I'm here this evening. We were involved several years ago helping the project with the Route 1 project, and at the time, because of cost concerns, that project was stopped, and the full diamond interchange that you were speaking about was canceled by the state. In the subsequent years, we've been working with Malden and other cities and gaming commission funds to look at what could be done to improve 1, and we think there's a good solution for Route 1 northbound that this project and the master plan image that you saw previously really supports, and that's the connection to Route 1 northbound. And the in and out of the site, and the new signal on Salem Street in front of the fire station that I believe you mentioned, Councilor Sereno, that would all be tied together and would be a condition of this approval with the state. We won't be able to build anything unless that work is advanced through MIPA and with Mass DOT. And we were just engaged about a month and a half ago to help with that process. So that it's coming back in a current form.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, going back to the coffee shop and the casual restaurant that you're talking about, what is the number of parking spaces that they're looking for these particular
Check that right now.
properties?
Just bear with me 1 second, Councilor, and I will pull that up for you. If you have it, Jen, you can tell me.
It's 4.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet.
Per what?
Per 1,000 square feet.
4.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So one of these, I'm just doing this from memory now, one of them was 6,000 square feet, so that would have to have approximately 30 spaces or something like that, correct? Okay.
That's correct, Councilor. Sorry, I was just looking
Okay,
at my notes
25 to
see.
30, something like that, okay. All right,
And there are 43, I'm sorry, Councilor, there are 43 spots proposed on Lot 1 as part of the commercial.
okay. And then, okay, I think that's all I have, Madam President. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, when I saw this, my hair started standing up, knowing what I went through back in 2009, being on the city council. And we were promised, and I remember Joe Shea was your attorney at the time and the representative, and he promised us that there would be a hotel built next to the fire station. Now, in 2009, we were also told that by 2014, everything would be completed, including the highway and the new interchange. I remember this very distinctly. And then I understand that the state put together, I don't know, $3 to $5 million for a transportation bond bill, and to be used and approved by the governor, whoever the governor was at the time, to make that approval. And from what I understand, Governor Patrick was the one that denied it and killed the whole deal, most of it. But I'm very upset that we don't have the commercial in Revere that we're entitled to, that we were promised. And I will never forget that, and I just don't like getting the shaft. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morabito?
Thank you. So I understand it's required to give notice when there's a public hearing to abutters, which would include residents. My question is, was there any attempt for outreach to the residents prior to this required notification, like asking for feedback or any surveys or anything conducted to just see where their feelings were at?
She's shaking her head now. Lieutenant.
At this stage, there have been multiple meetings in both municipalities with representatives, with staff. There has been a joint task force meeting that does include resident representation from both cities, and that was at a public hearing about maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago. And at this stage, we are intending a lot of engagement going forward, but at this point, we're just trying to make sure that we will feasibly be able to proceed under the rules of the road of zoning, and then understanding that it's part of the natural process and the right way to do development and business, to do as much engagement as we can. I was actually speaking with Celeste. I met her a few weeks ago outside the City Council chambers in Malden, and have been exchanging emails since, offering to do as much outreach as we can. Again, with the added complication that the proponents of the remaining lots do not own and control all of the buildings. And so what we can do is we can hand out flyers, but we can't go into the buildings and, force our way in if the property management of every building does not allow us to do so. So we'll, of course, be doing all required mailing and notice, and then intend to figure out a way to do sort of coffee hours on site where we can be visible, both of the owners of the remaining development, and just do whatever we can to find a way to engage and interact. But at this stage, it has only been the beginning of the process.
Thank you.
So can I just make a suggestion before this goes to the zoning committee? If you can have any presentations that you put up on the screen, just make sure we have a physical copy so we can see it. And also, if you can contact the ward counselor, Counselor Serino, and try to have a coffee hour with the residents, and notify the counselors as well, or he can notify the counselors. And I think that would be best prior to the next zoning meeting.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam President. I will confirm for Councilor Rizzo that I was here and was one of the voting members when we were promised a lot of things that did not happen. So I'm not going to get into all of them. What I will say is that this is going to my zoning committee, and I want a lot of this information that was talked about here tonight, especially the part of the owners that you may not own, but the parking being removed and stuff. I want somebody to come up here and give me actual facts. Is this happening? And we want to do something about it if it is. But please be prepared for the zoning meeting with all the relevant information that we're going to need. I mean, offhand, I certainly would like to see a small restaurant and a coffee shop there. But, to say it was at the expense of the hotel is not a good, and I'm not sure that this ownership group is part of that. And this is very confusing tonight here, knowing that there's multiple owners now. And, my colleague from Ward 2 was exactly correct. We were promised a lot and we didn't get a lot of what we were promised. That's being kind. I'm trying to be kind tonight here. It's the mild and gentler Tony Z. But anyways, that doesn't mean we're not very dissatisfied about the way, as my colleague said, I think he said he was shafted or something to that effect, but we certainly were. And you seem to be here in good faith tonight, and let's come to the zoning meeting with plenty of information, and all these questions were asked of all my colleagues and whatever residents were here. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Visconti?
Thank you, Madam President. I can say I wasn't on the council back then.
Were you alive?
Oh, come on, I'm not that young. But I guess my frustration really is similar to my colleagues, you know, being promised a hotel, a commercial development, and then having that withdrawn, help me understand, was it on the commercial or the hotel, is it on one of these lots that are being developed at this point?
That's correct, Councilor Visconti.
Well,
There's 2 lots left in Revere, and the lot 1, which is down on Salem Street, is where the hotel is proposed. It's probably the tiniest lot other than the fire station on the property, so that's.
So I'm just going to ask
Yep,
just a basic question.
sure.
You're asking us to, why would I want to approve a project when you came before us and promised the city council and the city a hotel, commercial development? Why do I want to replace that with a residential development right now? And why would I want to approve that? You came to us, I wasn't on the council, but you came to us whenever that time was, and you promised us that. So why would I want to approve anything but that?
Madam President, point of information.
You have permission.
The counselor, with all due respect, he's inaccurate because they're not proposing to replace what was supposed to be the hotel as residential. The residential piece on Lot 15, that was always going to be residential. The proposed change would be a hotel, I mean, from a hotel with retail to strictly retail. So just a point of information.
Oh, okay. All right. I thank you for the clarification, because obviously he wasn't aware of that. It's a standalone. But even so, if the proposal was for a hotel, why would I want to just approve a standalone when I believe more tax revenue can come into the city with a hotel-based commercial project?
So, Councilor, I think one of the main reasons for the change is just associated with the last several years and the hotel market itself nationally, as well as the challenges associated with the site. I'm just an engineer. I'm not a developer and a real estate person, but my understanding is that's really what's changing the whole complexion of hotels in the market itself. And we'll be happy to discuss that more at the zoning committee hearing.
We can discuss that more in zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Silvestri.
Thank you, Madam President, for the leeway. Lot 15, what size building, how many units will be in there, and do you know the dimensions, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom?
In terms of bedrooms, Councilor, it's roughly 50% 2-bedroom, 50% 1-bedroom. The total number of units, Councilor Schultz, do you recall? 310, sorry.
Wow.
So down from, I think, 360 was the prior presentation for that lot, so they've actually reduced the number of units on the lot as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Sereno.
Thank you, Madam President. One question I wanted to ask of Veris, if when you come to the zoning subcommittee, could you be prepared to explain what steps exactly you guys did take in the past few years to try to attract a hotel? I know that we've discussed that, you know, just generally speaking and more broadly, that the market, oh, they won't come because it's not directly on Route 1, all that kind of stuff. But if you could show us exactly what you've done to try to attract a hotel, I would appreciate that for the zoning subcommittee.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? We have a speaker. State your name again, please, and address.
Celeste Souza, 19 Overlook Ridge Terrace, Unit 124. Are we able to pull up the map of Overlook Ridge again, or is that? Okay, they did have the presentation. I would just like to state that the current residents of Revere that currently reside in the properties are not technically managed or owned by Wynn or Veris. So all the statements they've made claiming that the bus shuttle has been brought back and communicated to residents is not true. because the Revere residents are not owned by these people who are proposing the project. But it is an amenity that we were promised and was in our lease at the time of signing, and was advertised as a amenity to the community, and people moved here knowing that they could only have one car, and then they could take the shuttle into work, and you could still pick your child up from school with the other car, or if you didn't have a car, you could still go to work in the city, and that was taken away from us. But again, if you look at Overlook Ridge, whether you're on the Revere side, the Malden side, whether you're in the building owned by Veris and Wynn or another property manager owner, it's all one community. We live in a quarry. So it's all one community, basically. So the communications that they've promised, we've not received. The bus is not back to the current residents that reside in Revere. I personally am one. I check my email on the hour. I'm very involved in my community. I'm the only person who has communicated to any residents of Revere through our Facebook page about this project and giving proper updates, because there was an article that was released in the Malden newspaper and about the changes to the project, and then people started chiming in on the Facebook page, and when I'd walk my dog around the community, and there was a lot of false information being spread, and I spoke with Wynn and Veris at the end of the Malden City Council meeting last time, asking for clear and proper communication, and basically was told that since they don't manage or own or are the developers of the Revere resident properties that are Altera, which is now called The Chase, that will not be communicated to us residents. Only when construction's happening, we'll legally be required to get mailed a notice that there'll be construction in the area. Sorry, I don't know all the political terms of that. But that's basically what I was stated. So again, when they say that they don't know that parking's been taken away, I guess it's because it's not managed by their property. But again, they're doing the construction and building on the Revere side, which is basically, the Revere residents are sandwiched in the middle of their proposed projects. So it very much impacts us, especially when we're not getting communicated to properly. So I don't want to say I oppose the project, but I really wish that there's a way that the city could hold all property managers of the property, or all parties responsible for clear communication, and allow us to be involved in discussions. Because again, if you live there, you walk your dogs there, your children, it's all the same community. And we're impacted greatly by this, especially with the addition of new residential units.
Thank you. Can you address her concerns, please? Thank you.
So regarding the shuttle, as I did note, and I understand that there's confusion, and we'll come back prepared to speak in more detail about this, but with the shuttle, so the two owners who I represent, who are the remaining owners of the lots in both municipalities, have committed to and have brought back the shuttle. That's on their dime, despite the fact that it is actually a shared cost and obligation of all owners. They can't force the other owners to do it, but what they have done is the shuttle will do pickup and drop off in a central location in the entire community. And regardless of which building you live in, you are welcome to ride the shuttle. And that is all on the back of Wynn, who is not involved in Revere, and Veris, who is. And again, Veris will do everything in its power to communicate and benefit the community, but there are sort of legal barriers in terms of forcing another owner. I think BlackRock is an owner of one of the other buildings, and can people hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. And so again, just to the shuttle, it has been reinstated, and regardless of where you live, you can ride it.
Councilor Serino?
Madam President, without putting anybody on the spot, I know there are some people in the audience who are very familiar with the history of this development and this project, and I'm wondering through you if anybody can answer if the shuttle was a part of an original special permit or anything in writing or not. I don't know if anybody can answer that.
Good evening, Councilor, again. Yes, the shuttle is required through the MIPA process. The COVID and the lack of folks going into the offices and commuting into Boston was the primary reason for the demise. As things are coming back and folks are changing, that's part of the reason the shuttles were brought in. When we did the last traffic study in 2017, 2018, there was hundreds of people every morning getting on the shuttle. It was really effective. When they aren't going into the office, as is the case with a lot of workers today, there just aren't as many folks that had been using it, I think to the point where it was empty on several occasions, and that, I wasn't involved in that decision, but I believe that's why it was stopped, is no one was using it. But it is brought back now, as Mrs. Schultz said.
Actually, I'd just like to add that this team is prepared to accept as a condition to approval, be it of site plan review or of a zoning amendment, if we can figure out with the city solicitor how to fold that one in, to require from a local perspective the shuttle going forward.
Well, so my question would be, if it was required through you, Madam President, if it was required by MIPA and it was stopped because of the pandemic, what mechanism would force all the owners and not, was it a MIPA condition of a certain company, or like if the development keeps changing hands, because it has and it will continue, I'm sure, over the next 50 years, who is responsible to make sure that these conditions remain in place, or these requirements remain in place and not fall through the cracks and not have obstinate, development, property management companies that don't want to
Sure,
help out?
understood, Counselor. So it's a complicated question with a complicated answer. The MIPA certificate that most recently was approved for the project, as some of you know who have been through the full history of it, there have been multiple project changes over the years, and that's been both on the local level in both municipalities and on the state level. And so the most recent MIPA certificate, for the master MIPA certificate for the entire build-out of the project, required that in order to reach final conclusion of the project, that the shuttle is part of traffic mitigation. And so in the most recent MIPA certificate, it was approved by the state to push out the final roadway improvements and some of the other transportation demand measures in order to improve and speak to the impacts of traffic. And so it is still, I guess I would say, an open requirement by MIPA and under that process. And so in order to ultimately receive DOT's approval for any of the roadway work, it will be written into that permit, because they'll be our state actor here, that be a condition. I believe Bob can speak to this. It's already in the Section 61 findings of the MIPA certificate issued by DOT, albeit now 5 or 6 years ago. But again, even at the local level, to increase oversight and the ability to police, because the reality is, at least in my experience, MIPA doesn't really police its obligations. And so if there is a way that we can work with the city, yours and Malden, or just Revere, we are absolutely willing to do so, and stating on the record that would accept that as a condition to ensure that shuttle service does remain to serve the entire community, regardless of where the residents live.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to refer this to zoning.
Calendar item number 7, communications. Communication from the city auditor relative to the receipt reserved for appropriation fund or enterprise fund for cable-related purposes.
State your name and address.
Sure, Richard Viskey, 281 Broadway. Just before you, as I typically am every quarter, with a request to appropriate money received from the cable TV providers in the city to go towards community access television. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Councilors, any questions? Road call.
Shall the City Council approve an appropriation from the Cable Access Receipt Reserve Fund for Revere TV's quarterly invoice in the amount of $156,725.32? Councilor Cogliandro.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito.
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Powers is absent. Counselor Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Sereno?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Silvestri?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Visconti?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And President Pro Tempore McKenna?
Yes.
Yes, the appropriation has been approved. Calendar item number 8, communication from the city auditor relative to the establishment of a fund for handicap parking violations.
Mr. Viskey?
Yes, good afternoon. As you probably have read in your communication, there is a Massachusetts general law that would allow the city to put any handicap parking violations, revenue received, into a separate receipt reserved for appropriation account that could be used for ADA compliance issues and other related expenses that we incur in the city for compliance with ADA regulations and handicapped residents. This law has been on the books for a while. We have never come before the council to adopt it. However, after meeting with Ralph DeChico, the chairman of the Commission Disabilities, and the parking director, Zach Babel, we have determined that this would be something that we could get behind and encourage and segregate those handicap violations in the city and put it in a reserved account to be used for the benefit of those ADA residents in the city. So happy to try to answer any question on that. I know Ralph and Zach are both here to also answer any questions. And before anyone asks, we average about $35,000 to $40,000 a year in these types of violations. And we would then just segregate out that money. And any money used from that fund would have to come before the council for an appropriation. So happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you very much.
Councilors? Thank you.
Thank you.
State your name and address, please.
Ralph DeChico, 281 Broadway, Chair of the Revere Commission on Disabilities and ADA Coordinator for the City of Revere. Some of your councilors know, and I've been trying to get this done for numerous years. Thank you to the help of CFO Rich Viskey and Parking Director Zach. We have finally been able to come to the council to ask for this. Many communities within the Commonwealth are moving towards this so that the money can be appropriated to go directly for ADA causes such as infrastructure work, programs for people with disabilities, and so forth, and events such as the National ADA Day event yearly. So that's something that I'm looking forward to trying doing, especially expanding my capacity, doing more ADA work with the City of Revere. There's a lot of issues that it will make it a lot more easier to get the money appropriated. So I'm hoping to have the approval of this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Shall the City Council accept Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 22G, relative to funds received from handicap parking fines? Councilor Cogliandro?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers is absent. Councilor Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Silvestri?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Visconti?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And President Pro Tempore McKenna?
Yes.
Yes, the general law has been accepted. Calendar item number 9, we're on motions. Motion presented by President Pro Tempore McKenna and Councilor Rizzo that the acting mayor request the Director of Municipal Inspections to meet and speak with the management at the Revere Adult Daycare Center to discuss late-night noise, including a recent wedding that had adverse impacts on surrounding residents.
I'm going to give this to Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Madam President. There were complaints down there by some of the abutting neighbors of the facility. There was a function that was held down there that was not in compliance with the use of the property. It has been addressed, and so as far as I can tell, unless you have anything further to add, Madam President, I don't think we need to pursue this any further.
Thank you. I just think that we should keep a watchful eye because they're renting, they're having functions after their hours of, service for the elderly. They had a wedding there after hours. We don't know if they had alcohol or not, but it was never, brought to the city's attention. So I really do think we need to watch them. We've had problems with them before, and I think we need to to put a watchful eye on their facility. Thank you. Cool. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 10, motion presented by Councilor Rizzo that the city solicitor appear before the city council to discuss the city's potential liability for ongoing operations and current ownership of the former Wonderland Dog Track site.
Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you, Madam President. I received an email, I'm not exactly sure when, but I received an email from the city solicitor essentially saying we can't talk about it, can't discuss it because of the litigation. But I disagree with that opinion. I mean, as city councilors, I think we should know what activity is taking place on that site. If there's any activity that's generating revenue, where is that revenue going? I'm told there's parking there, and we have no idea. And what's the city's liability now that we own that property? What is the city's liability if somebody who's parking there in the, whenever, it could be summer, but in the wintertime when there's ice and snow, who's responsible for maintaining that property, the lot, if somebody slips and falls? There's just a lot of questions I have, and I think just to say we can't talk about it because it's in litigation over what we're going to pay for the site. We offered them the $29 million. They think they could get up to $100 million. That's being fought out in court, but I don't know why we can't understand as a city council what risks we have or what operations are taking place on that property. So I would like to know what's going on there, and I think we all deserve those answers. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Councilor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree wholeheartedly with Councilor Rizzo. I think that this is a really important issue. I'd like to know where we are on maybe getting close to settling this, because ultimately we need to know what this number is that we're going to be paying, because it's going to have a big impact on the city. So I would really like some sort of an update about what's going on. And there are tons of cars parked over there. Are we getting revenue from that? It's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, in part, I agree what we're hearing, but relating to the mitigation, I think we should have an executive session to hear the mayor or Mr. Capizzi to explain that portion. But I think, and I've had thoughts in my mind also about the parking, knowing that these companies have been parking cars there for umpteen years, and we haven't been getting our fair share of the fees that we should be getting. I thought it was like $18,000 a year that we were supposed to get for parking. And it's been at least 7 or 8 years that we haven't received anything since the original agreement that we gave them the special permit to park there. And the litigation there is that the folks that own the property got a special permit for 2 years. And they're saying that the special permit goes on forever. So that's the portion that I know of as far as the parking is concerned. So, I think we ought to go, ask for a executive session for anything dealing with the Wonderland litigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morabito.
I couldn't agree more to hear this in executive session. I think addressing these issues and these questions will help the city council, understand the scope of liability. And I think it's very important for us to know so we can develop appropriate strategies, for managing and mitigating any potential risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? All in favor? Oh, Councilor Rizzo.
Madam President, just one more thing, because obviously, if we're going to discuss the litigation itself, that, the reason that we're in litigation, that would be an executive session. But I still think that we don't have to go into executive session to find out what operations are taking place on that property as we speak. if any revenue is being generated, and if revenue is being generated or operations are being held on that site, what's the city's liability? I mean, I don't think that, why does that have to go to executive session? We can talk about the litigation of what we're actually in litigation for, but this motion talks about, to discuss the liability of ongoing operations. I'm not asking about in fact, quite honestly, that's going to play itself out. I mean, if we can get an update, I think that would be great. I'm more concerned about what's happening, what is taking place on that site day to day. And I don't think that needs to go to executive session.
Madam President, point of information.
Speak
The
your point.
motion does ask about the current ownership of the former Wonderland Dog Track site. If that portion was taken out of it, I wouldn't have a problem with having a regular open session on the current operations that the city of Revere has part of.
That's fine. I'm fine with that. I just want to know what's going on the site. I would think we all would.
Thank you. All in favor?
Is this
Can we amend it?
Is an amendment to
Yes.
take out that portion?
Do you want to read the, as amended?
That the city solicitor appear before the city council to discuss the city's potential liability for ongoing operations at the Wonderland Dog Track site.
Fine.
All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 11, motion presented by Councilor Rizzo, that the acting mayor request the Revere Retirement Board to provide information as to the reimbursement of COLA benefits for retirees of the city of Revere that are due. Only 9 months out of a 10-month benefit have been paid thus far. Therefore, each retiree is owed their share of this benefit.
Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I'm happy to see Rich Viscay here. Him and I actually had a conversation prior to the meeting about this motion. And, he did add some clarification that it was nothing more than kind of a glitch or a clerical error that is going to be cleared up. So all of our retirees will be compensated for that extra month. And I'll let him, elaborate on that. But there was also another couple of questions from people that called me, I guess when they saw this motion on the calendar, that we're concerned that this COLA increase that the city council approved was only a temporary, but that is not true. And so I want them to know the COLA increase that they received is a permanent increase. So I just want to put that to bed. Wherever that came from, that is not true. This COLA is going to be part of their permanent compensation. And Mr. Viscay, if you want to elaborate a little.
Sure, thank you, Councilor. Rich Viscay again, also Chairman of the Revere Retirement Board. And you are correct, Councilor. There was a glitch in the COLA, not to bore you with all the details, but when the 5% COLA was voted by the Retirement Board, then brought before the council for approval. Once that happened, there was a lag in time, so we owed the retirees a retro payment. Come to find out, we put the last day of the month in as April 28th, which was a Friday. Because we didn't put April 30th, which was a Sunday, which we thought it was really the regular business day, the computer didn't count that month as a full month. Therefore, 9 months got paid out as opposed to 10. So kudos to your constituents who found that error. We did verify it is about $20 per retiree that we will probably have to manually go through and add that in for the next retirement benefit payment. And to clarify for everybody, the 5% on the first $13,000, which is what was voted, that 5% was above the 3% that typically voted because the legislator allowed us to do so due to the high cost of inflation and such. That does become a permanent part of your base going forward. So that 5% is permanently added into the base of the retirement, and any raises on that beyond fiscal year 24 will compound on that 5%. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows that that's the case, and we will be getting everybody their retroactive 1 month payment, hopefully by the time we process next month, if not the following month for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rich. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Viscay. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 12, motion presented by Councilor Sereno, that the following proposed ordinance be ordered to a public hearing. An ordinance further amending the revised ordinances of the City of Revere relative to the regulation of fireworks.
Councilor Sereno?
Thank you, Madam President. So this motion, or this ordinance change, came about because of the 4th of July. So as crazy as it sounds, I know fireworks and the 4th of July go together, but what we've seen, at least in Ward 6, and I'm sure across the city, over the last few years are a very large increase of people lighting off fireworks, not just on the 4th, but in the days leading up to and, for a few days after the fact. And in particular, at St. Mary's Church in the parking lot, the last few years there have been people going down there and lighting off fireworks. But this year, there was like almost an organized show by a group of people that went down, and not only were they illegally lighting off fireworks, they left the state of St. Mary's field, or the parking lot, in disarray with trash of, the fireworks that got shot off, they left all the trash of the discarded fireworks. So not only do we have an issue of people shooting off fireworks, making a mess of our streets, side streets, there are a lot of concerns with fireworks in general. Number one, and first and foremost, people with PTSD, veterans. Obviously, shooting off fireworks in neighborhoods gives, traumatic flashbacks, number one. People with pets, their dogs, I'm sure, everyone knows, run and hide and bark. But also, and almost more of a public safety issue, is the proximity of homes in our city with people lighting off fireworks. People are drunk, people are, they're not lighting responsibly, I'm sure, most people. If they're lighting them off in the street or in backyards, if an ember hits a home, or I actually believe on the 4th of July, there was on Washington Avenue some sort of small, it might have been a mulch fire, it might have been a roof, or there was some sort of fire incident. But this 4th of July, more so than any, was just out of control in West Revere. So that brings me to the ordinance. I have to thank former Rep. Reinstein, because she kind of gave me this idea in talking with her, that our municipal ordinances, yes, we ban fireworks, but there's just one sentence that bans people from lighting off fireworks within city limits. So this ordinance I took from the state law that poses harsher penalties and seeks enforcement of people shooting off fireworks. So I know our police department is taxed. I know, resources are few and far between, but this is a public safety issue, and I think we need to treat it as such and at least get it on the books, because right now what we have on the books is inadequate to provide public safety. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam President. I can't agree with you any more than you have already, but exactly what happened down in Shirley Avenue. In the corner of Shirley Ave and Nahant Ave, right next to the Veterans Building, where we have 30 former homeless veterans who are all impacted with PTSD. And the street was left with piles and piles and piles of debris from these fireworks. And as Councilor Sereno stated, our police department is taxed, but it's great that we put these in here. But if we don't get a full measure of enforcement, these don't mean anything. But I will vote for it, and I want to increase the power of it. But, we have to enforce, through the chief, to put on more troops, and I say more police officers, that night, and put them in cars or put them on the street and let them walk. We have a bunch of great folks working in the police department, but they have to get out there and be beyond good control. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you. Just very briefly, and I just want to follow up on what was just said. Enforcement is obviously the key to almost every single ordinance, and So we really have to have something in place that's gonna, when you look around the city, and it's not just Revere, by the way, every city and town that you drive through, particularly on the 4th of July, you're gonna see this type of activity. I just think for our law enforcement, it's gonna be extremely difficult for them, given the manpower, certainly the manpower that we have now. It's gonna be very, very difficult for them to enforce this. But I guess putting forth an ordinance is a good start to solving a problem. I also want to give a shout out to our Public Works Department, who did a good job cleaning up St. Mary's. They went down there and it was a real mess. In fact, I got a call from a couple of residents that, had gone down there and actually sent photos of it. And so thank you to our Public Works employees for going down there and taking care of that in a timely manner. So as they have to do around the city, because when you drive around the city, you see all the remnants of the fireworks that have been shot off. It's all over the street. And so, good job to everybody involved on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cogliandro?
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Councilor Sereno. Do you think this would be worth putting into a public safety subcommittee so we could have further discussion with maybe the chief of police, see if we can actually get a plan or something
It's
along those
going
lines?
to a public hearing.
Oh, public hearing. Okay, thank
So-
you.
Permission to speak from the chair, please? Every July 4th, I stay home because I have a 150-year-old house. It's all wood, and we're on top of each other in Beachmont. And I am so afraid that a spark or a rocket, bottle rocket, is going to go up on my roof or somewhere else. So I'm the protector. I feel like the protector. But I think we need to do something a little bit more than police presence. I think we need to have a reverse 911 that night to tell people, because a lot of people don't watch the council, they don't know what's going on. So we need to have a reverse 911 saying, about this ordinance, that you cannot light fireworks because they're illegal. You cannot light fireworks in Beachmont when we're on top of each other and all the houses are old, or anywhere else in the city. So I think we should go a step further and do this. Thank you. Order to a public hearing.
Calendar item number 13, motion presented by Councilors Cogliandro and Silvestri that the acting mayor request Mr. Matt Philbin, holder of the only cannabis license in the city of Revere, to appear before the city council to discuss his plans relative to opening a dispensary in the city of Revere.
Councilor Silvestri, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, myself and my colleague filed this motion. It's been a decade, since this license has been approved, and not only has nothing been moved forward, there are some major issues going on with one of the owners. Also, I see on the license, as one of the directors of the business, their name's on his medical license. And I know that this person no longer works and has their own litigation against the owner of this license. So, we need some answers, Madam President. This license was issued in 2013. We're going into 2024, and nothing's been done. The building's not up. And as the counselor to my right said earlier, and a few of my other colleagues, we get promised these grandiose projects, and then we get sold a bag of goods. And we're here the same as Overlook Ridge. We were promised a dispensary with a growery, with a grow facility, and all the bells and whistles. And the only thing we got down there is a park and fly. So I'd like them to come before us and explain to us what's going on in a few of these issues that I see with the license. I wonder if, with what's going on, if they would still even stand. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with my colleague. This is just about getting answers. I know that the city is you know, the city, the last time this was voted on, the city voted this down, and if he could come in before us and tell us if he still intends to do this, and if he doesn't, why do we have the license in the first place? So then now it's not hanging over our head whether we're going to get this or not at some time. So we filed this. My sole purpose is I just want the information about what his plans are. So if he would come before us and just give an explanation, that's pretty much all we're looking for. Thank you.
So are we going to order this to a public hearing, or we're going to put it in? Oh, it doesn't go to a public hearing. Okay. So all in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 14, motion presented by Councilor Cogliandro that the City Council rescind special municipal employee status pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 268A, Section 1N, for members of the school committee.
Councilor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Madam President. This basically eliminates the ability to get paid twice by the city. If you work for the city currently, you can also be on the school committee and collect 2 checks. We can't do that on the council. This is just kind of housekeeping. It hasn't been an issue since it was adopted years. I forget the year. It must be close to 20 years ago or something like that. 2000, so 23 years ago. But you know, I think that this is a good change that we need to make. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Roll call.
Shall the City Council rescind special municipal employee status for members of the school committee? Councilor Cogliandro.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido. Yes. Councilor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers is absent. Councilor Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Silvestri.
No.
No. Councilor Visconti.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes. And President Pro Tempore McKenna.
Yes.
Yes. Special municipal employee status has been rescinded from the school committee. Calendar item number 15, motion presented by Councilor Zambudo that the City Council direct the city clerk to request a second opinion from outside legal counsel relative to KP Law's June 2nd, 23 initial opinion on appointments and hires.
Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Madam President. This is pretty much speaks for itself. Obviously, I didn't agree with the opinion from KP Law, and obviously the City Council has its own budget for outside counsel, and we should get a second opinion from a much, in my opinion, more qualified organization. That's my spiel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 16, motion presented by President Pro Tempore McKenna that the acting mayor request the DPW to install a speed hump on Mill Street, Crescent Ave, and Endicott Ave. These streets experience a high volume of vehicles as they are used as a cut-through.
Thank you. These streets are inundated with traffic and speeding, so I was just, just to slow these streets down, I would like to have some speed humps on these 3 streets. Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 17, motion presented by President Pro Tempore McKenna that the acting mayor request the Traffic Commission to establish a traffic regulation limiting the number of residential parking stickers issued per household to 6.
Thank you. So I just learned this about a month ago, that one address, a single-family house, can have up to 10 resident stickers, which I think is ridiculous. So I'm asking to lower that to 6, and I'm going to have Director Babbo come up and talk about the unrestricted apartments that are on this list too. Thank you. State your name and address, please.
Thank you, Council President, members of the council. Zach Babbo, 300 Broadway, Revere Parking Department. So when the ordinance was created, the only restricted addresses that were provided were any buildings that have 7 or more units. Those are the ones that were put in front of site plan review and looked at what was proposed at the time those buildings were created, whether the developer was going to provide off-street parking or special variance was needed in order to seek on-street parking relief. Currently, those are the only addresses, any building with 7 or more units that have any type of restrictions as far as limitations to number of permits. The rest of the single, 2, 3, 4 family households, they hold no restrictions. They can get up to 10, which our system would allow. If they were to seek more than 10, it would require an override by my department, but there is nothing to stop me from that override. Obviously, we do the best we can to try to corral and ask people, are there any other parking areas you could look into? Is there any off-street? But at the end of the day, no. The ordinance allows us to go up to 10.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any councilors?
Madam President,
Councilor Novoselsky.
Zach, does residential parking stickers, is that by apartment or by building? The 10?
If it's a building with 6 units or less, each unit is unrestricted. They can get up to 10 per unit.
So they can get 60 stickers in
Yes.
that one building?
Yes. We don't run into it often. There are a few buildings in the city. They're more 2-family and 3-family homes that have, there are some houses that have up to 9, but there's not any that exceed 10 at this moment.
Not per apartment?
No, definitely not per apartment, and the only time we ever see the X amount where it's 7 or more is usually 1s and 2s.
So somebody with 8 cars in their apartment can get stickers?
Yes,
And they have 8 cars on the road?
correct.
That's kind of high, but thank you.
Madam President? Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you, Madam President. Zach, thanks for being here. So, like, some of this is news to me. I'm not 100% in tune with all the parking regulations and visitor parking and sticker parking and all the, so this may sound like a rhetorical question, but when all these particular permits are being issued per unit, I'm assuming, do you see registrations that show these vehicles are registered out of those addresses?
Yes, so what we do at the beginning of each year, once the first commitment excise tax comes out, we take that CSV file provided to us by our deputy tax collector and send it to our permit vendor. They will run it through their system and go across the restricted addresses, non-restricted addresses, and try to mail out permits as best they can. And they'll use the excise tax database to do the first fulfillment at the beginning of each year. And then throughout the year, as residents come in to apply, yes, they have to provide those types of documentations, whether it's residency documentations or for a vehicle, it has to be a registered vehicle to the address, so I have to see the registration to approve it.
Okay, and Madam President, if I could just have just a little bit of latitude, just to ask, if this is an off-the-beaten-path question, visitor passes.
Mm-hmm.
How do visitor passes work? It's my understanding there's a lot of areas, I know my area, the restriction for, parking on the street, you'll get tagged anywhere between midnight and I think it's 5 a.m. or something like that.
Midnight to 6.
Midnight to 6,
Yep.
okay. So, but you don't need a visitor pass if you're having people over during the day, as long as they're not there until, if they're there after midnight, that's when they would need the visitor pass. But prior to that, people, if they're having multiple, if they're having a family get-together or some sort, a big birthday party, something like that, they can park there without fear of not having a visitor pass, right?
If your street's governed by overnight resident parking, yes.
Right.
In the Ward 1, Ward 2 communities where it's 24 hours, it's a little different. You always need to have something displayed.
Okay, and, because I get a lot of questions from people pertaining to visitor passes, like how do you get them, how many can you get? Let's say you live in Ward 1, and you're going to have multiple people over. Is there a limit to how many visitor passes you can get?
We issue 1 per address. When this program first came out in 2020, we were doing 2, well, before it went citywide, it was only within the MBTA districts, geographically located. And the city had done 2 visitor passes per applicant or 4 visitor passes per household. So if it was a 4-family, you could have up to 20 visitor passes in there. And we immediately realized people were copying them, they were selling them. It was very abused. So we rescinded it down to 1 when it went citywide in 2020. And it's helped a lot in areas where it's 24 hours, Ward 1 and 2. We understand that this can really tie down those residents from having gatherings or guests over. So more often than not, a resident will reach out to us through email or phone call, letting us know, hey, I'm having a graduation or a birthday party in this matter. We try to get as much information as we can. Obviously, they don't know the plates of all their guests, so they'll tell us amount of cars, length of time that it will happen, and we'll let our parking officers know to kind of work with the community over there and, be friendly.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, thank you very much, Zach, appreciate it. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Zach. All in favor? All opposed? So order.
Calendar item number 18, motion presented by Councilor Morbido that the acting mayor request the Traffic Commission to establish Hancock Street as a one-way heading towards Mountain Avenue.
Counselor Morabito.
Thank you. So I met with quite a few households a few weeks ago, and we discussed their concerns about their street currently being a two-way and how one-way will help help prevent safety issues and concerns, and it will help prevent speeding from everyone cutting through to go onto Park Ave. So I'll save my comments for Traffic Commission.
Anybody else? Counselor Cogliandro.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Madam President. Is it parking on both sides right now, or is it parking on one side? Okay, thank you.
Any other counselors? All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 19, motion presented by Councilor Silvestri that the acting mayor request Don Chermella and Brian Dakin to appear before the city council to discuss the culvert at the existing site of the Revere High School.
Counselor Silvestri.
Just place on file, Madam President. He was up tonight and discussed it. Thank you.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 20, motion presented by Councilor Cogliandro that the acting mayor request the Traffic Commission to establish a regulation which would allow commercial vehicles that are not registered in the city of Revere to purchase a parking permit for the Central Avenue Municipal Lot at a cost of $50 per month.
Counselor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to place this on file. There's more research that I need to do. Thank you.
Place on file.
Calendar item number 21, motion presented by Councilor Silvestri that the City Council award a certificate of merit to Parking Control Officer Marco Basta for administering Narcan to an unresponsive person and ultimately saving this individual's life on June 13th.
Counselor Silvestri.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it was brought to my attention last week that during his normal patrol, Marco came across an individual that was laid on the sidewalk, stopped his patrol car, got out, tried to communicate with the man who was unresponsive, Narcaned him, and ultimately saving that gentleman's life. If that's not going above and beyond the call of duty as a parking attendant in the city, I don't know what is. Then this morning, I received an email from his director that received an email from a constituent. Marco was again walking his duty and came across a woman that had a flat tire. Stopped his day and changed the tire out on Shirley Ave. Every time I see him, he's stopped, he's talked to residents, he's communicating, and it really goes to show the amount that he takes pride in his job, in the position. And I know the city has that amount of money where they recognize employees. So I'm hoping he does get recognized by the city as well, but this council should recognize him for his efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Babel?
Zach Babel, Revere Parking Director. Councilor Silvestri, thank you for this. Marco is a model employee, and I think he deserves this. And to even go further, I have an unbelievable staff, whether it's the on-street people or it's the in-office employees. They really go above and beyond for residents, any chance they can get, even if it has nothing to do with our department. It's not, oh, please, here's a number, call. Let me make a phone call. Let me try to help you out. Unfortunately, we're not always recognized for the great things that we do throughout the community, but in times that we are, it's great to see a counselor come up and provide a certificate. Marco responded very well this day to help somebody who was unfortunately overdosing, took all the proper processes to get through that and really stayed calm during it, called the Revere police and did whatever he could to assist before police officers showed up. And back to this Friday, very, very humid day out. There was an elderly couple. They broke down on Shirley Ave. They got a flat tire. They were waiting for AAA to come, and AAA had a very long, it was like about 2-hour wait time. So Marco was walking by. They were at a parking meter. That's what engaged the conversation. Marco quickly identified the situation, quickly identified who was in the situation, and said, "Where's your supplies? I'm going to do this." Jacked up the car, took the tire off, replaced it. He was done before AAA could even get there. Like him and many of my employees, they go above and beyond. It's great to see them recognized. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much. Councilor Rizzo?
Thank you, Madam President. Just want to echo the sentiments of Councilor Silvestri. Marco is just, it's hard to give out parking tickets and have, for starters, I can't imagine anybody who wants to go around giving out parking tickets. And maybe second place to that might be the crossing guards. I don't know. Those are two very, very, very difficult jobs. But Marco somehow has a way about him that, don't get me wrong, I'm not looking for a ticket. But, I mean, he can give you a ticket and not make you feel horrible about it, you know? And he just has a very good way about him. And I think if more people, acted and responded the way he does, as you alluded to him as a model employee, we would have a tremendous, not that we don't, but we would have an even better workforce out there, because he handles himself all the time, very calm, very compassionate, in a job that, again, is not an easy job. So hats off to Marco and your staff.
Thank you,
Councilor Visconti?
Thank you, Madam President. Council Silvestri, great motion. And, working right off of Broadway, I have a tendency to see Marco actually walk the beat. And there's always a smile on his face, always polite, just a great employee of the city. And where his job usually giving out tickets, you're getting called every name in the book, for doing your job. It's great to see somebody that has such a great disposition of himself, and it's just great to see. He deserves it. He's always polite, even if you're yelling at him. And I've seen that happen, and he just controls the conversation, and he's a model employee of the city, which is great. So I commend my fellow colleague for putting in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cogliandro?
Thank you, Madam President. The same as Councilor Visconti, we had our business on Broadway for 20 years, and in the time Marco's been with the department, he's always made a point to come in, let us know, like, hey, this meter's running out, or you got to have that car move. He was never out to get anybody. And he is, like you said, he's a model employee. Always a smile on his face. I can't agree with what everyone said more. So, thank you, Councilor Silvestri. Well deserved.
Councilor Morabito?
I echo the same sentiments of my colleague. Marco is just a stellar employee to have for the city. He's the epitome of what an employee with a great attitude is. And I think when you have management above you who can run a department smoothly and treat their employees fairly, I think that speaks volumes under your management as well. So that's a testament to you and your leadership. But that doesn't take away from Marco and his acts. And he's just a kind person overall, and he would take the shirt off his back to give it to someone if they were cold. And that's more of the service we're looking to provide at City Hall. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam President. I see Marco every day down in Shirley Ave. I've never seen a guy so happy in his job. He loves what he's doing. But like was said, he doesn't want people to get hurt. The only thing I haven't seen him do yet is put a quarter in a meter that someone ran out so they wouldn't get the ticket. But I'm sure he has, but he is a great guy, very friendly and sociable, and, he can run for office and win. So. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zambudo?
Thank you, Madam President. We all feel the same way about Marco, but I couldn't not say something now because it looks like I don't love him like everybody does. So he is a fantastic guy, and he's well-deserved, and thanks, Mark, for putting this in.
Permission to speak from the chair? I just want to say that I call him all the time for problems at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. He always answers the phone, and he always comes. So I just kudos, and kudos to Councilor Silvestri for putting this in. Thank you.
And just a little story, just to mention how prepared he usually is for any type of situation. If you ever look, he'll come by Mark and have a big bulge on the side of his pants pocket, and it's like, what do you have stuffed in your pocket? He carries it all the time with him, a tourniquet, a Narcan kit, and other life-saving equipment in his, because he never wants to not answer the call when a chance comes, as well as many of my other officers. They care for the community, and they care for members, whether they live in here or traveling throughout it. They want to make sure when they're out there and whatever they see that they're safe, and whatever they need, that my staff can provide it to them. And I'm very grateful for everything they do.
Thank you. We are too. Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? So ordered.
Motion presented by Councilor Sereno that the acting mayor direct the chief of police to have the traffic division do directed speed enforcement along Malden Street in the vicinity of Hall's Corner, particularly from Roland Road to Conant Street. Further, that the acting mayor direct the chief of police to have the traffic division do directed enforcement in the area of Washington Avenue at Amelia Place due to motorists speeding up at Amelia Place the wrong way, as it is a one-way street.
Councilor Sereno.
Madam President, I wish to amend this motion, and I had sent the language to the clerk. Let me just pull it up. Madam President, through you, can I read it as amended, or do you have to? Okay. Motion presented by Councilor Sereno as amended, that the acting mayor direct the chief of police to have the traffic division do directed speed enforcement along Malden Street in the vicinity of Hall's Corner, particularly from Roland Road to Conant Street. Additionally, that the Traffic Commission look at the feasibility of implementing traffic calming strategies in the vicinity of Hall's Corner, including but not limited to a three-way stop at Hall's Corner and/or raised crosswalks / a speed table at Hall's Corner or on Malden Street in front of Vinnie's Market, where a crosswalk currently exists. That was the amended part. Further, that the acting mayor direct the chief of police to have the traffic division do directed enforcement in the area of Washington Ave at Amelia Place due to motorists speeding up Amelia Place the wrong way, as it's a one-way street. So we've spoken a lot, even tonight, about the need for speed enforcement and speed measures in Revere. And the day has come, unfortunately, that somebody in my ward on Malden Street in front of Vinnie's Market last week was hit, a pedestrian was hit crossing the street in the crosswalk. And this was the worst fear of a lot of us that we've expressed over the years relative to speed in the city. And I would venture to say speeding on our roadways is an epidemic. We see it on all of our major thoroughfares, on our side streets. And we've been kind of, going back and forth about what is the answer to try to limit people and change people's behavior in terms of speeding on our streets. Obviously, enforcement is first and foremost, but enforcement isn't the only mechanism. There's not always going to be a police officer on Malden Street or Washington Ave or Shirley Ave or any one of our streets. So we really, as a city, need to have serious conversations about I know we've started putting speed tables, but we need to really look at our streets and figure out different strategies on how to slow people down. And in particular, this motion is asking the Traffic Commission to look at Hall's Corner because right now, Hall's Corner for years has been a speedway. You go around that bend, you only have to stop if you're coming from the direction of the school on Newhall Street onto Malden Street. But Malden Street just flows and people fly around that corner, and that's what happened and why that poor woman got hit last week. So I would really like the Traffic Commission to look specifically at Hall's Corner and the Malden Street corridor, and hopefully we can really try to figure out how we can slow people down on our streets across the entire city. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rizzo?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, that, to echo Councilor Serino's comments, we both live in the same neighborhood. That has always been an accident waiting to happen, and unfortunately, we suffered that tragedy recently down there. This is an intersection, and I know there's people that are probably watching this meeting right now, and virtually every part of the city has their own problems and their own issues. In this particular case, at Hall's Corner, for those people that live in that area down by Vinnie's Market, it's a constant, you take your life in your hands no matter which way you're coming from. If you're coming down Malden Street from Broadway, there's people shooting out in front of you from Newhall Street. If you're coming, just every direction. That is an intersection that we absolutely need signalization. People walk their dogs, they go for walks along Malden Street, coming down Newhall Street and continuing on. There's a guardrail there now. At one time, it's hard to believe there wasn't a guardrail, but there's a guardrail there now, and several times the guardrail has had to be replaced because people go into it and it pushes right into the sidewalk. So I know that, even with the guardrail, there's serious safety concerns, but I think a way to solve this is permanent signalization, and the city's got to find the money to make that happen. We can't go on the way it is right now. Speeding is a problem across the city. We got to attack it piece by piece, area by area, and try to solve this one, as best we can. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I agree with the gentleman. That is a bad corner. I have the speeding issue down Shirley Ave area, Beach Street, Campbell Ave, crazy. And especially now that they did North Shore Road, people are speeding on North Shore Road.
Yep.
But I had a problem at the corner of Beach Street and Walnut Ave. And I really couldn't get any full-time signalization there, even though there's a blinking light. I had the Traffic Commission authorize stop signs in both directions of Beach Street, and it has worked out so well. And I suggest to you to look at that and make people stop coming in both directions on Malden Street, put a stop bar there, several stop signs, so now it's a three-way stop coming out of Newhall and on Malden Street. So I think that may solve it after a while, and people realize it, and see if the police can put somebody there for the beginning of it to make sure people do it. And mine has worked out very well, and people are very happy with it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Cogliandro?
Thank you, Madam President. Again, I don't think since I've been elected, we haven't had a meeting without a speeding motion or something along that line. And I just want to be clear that I wish, I know that the way the world is, people don't want to be police officers right now. Not everyone wants to be a police officer. And that is a majority of the reason why, we aren't fully staffed the way we need to be. But, I do like that we're doing things like speed tables, even blinking stop signs, raised crosswalks. I do want to throw something else out there. I was just in Long Island, New York, and I watched a car go through a red light and a camera flashed. And so I asked about it. The camera flashed, no police officer, camera flashes, that person gets their letter in the mail with a video and pictures kind of saying, we got you, and with a fine. So maybe that could be something potentially to look into. Thank you.
Counselor Serino?
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Cogliandro brought up a great point, and he had mentioned about the automated enforcement. So right now in Massachusetts, that's not allowed. It's illegal. But there's a bill pending in the legislature that would allow 10 municipalities within the Commonwealth to try it as a trial basis, as like a pilot program. So that bill has not passed yet, but I believe the city of Cambridge, it's actually the rep from Cambridge that had proposed it, and Cambridge wants to be one of the municipalities. And God help me, I know we never like to compare Revere to Cambridge in that regard, but it would be, I think that would actually be something that would be beneficial to the city of Revere and to the people of Revere to do automated enforcement, especially on thoroughfares like Sargent Street, like Malden Street, Washington Ave, in those, those streets. And Madam President, apologize for the leeway, but I totally forgot to mention that this was a two-pronged motion. I just looped in all my traffic issues in one motion. People are going up Amelia Place the wrong way off Washington Ave. So I got a couple of calls about that. So just asking the police department to do more enforcement. I know I occasionally see a cruiser parked at the Church of Latter-day Saints on Washington Ave, right across from Amelia Place. So if they could just park right on the other side of that parking lot, they can try to catch people going up the wrong way. So I would appreciate that. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? All in favor? All opposed? So ordered as amended.
Calendar item number 23, motion presented by Councilor Zambudo, that the City Council approve an act relative to candidate eligibility and elected public service in the offices of mayor, city councilor at large, ward councilor, and school committee member of the City of Revere.
Counselor Zambudo.
Thank you, Madam President. This pretty much speaks for itself, but by rule, it has to go to committee, so I'm not even going to really elaborate on it. It's got to go to committee by rule, and we'll discuss it. Thank you.
Refer to legislative affairs. Oh, Mr. Counselor Morabito.
I just want to express my view on this. So the downfall of a city council voting on a provision like this is the optics. It indicates that it's influenced by political interests, okay? On the other hand, a ballot referendum, okay, allows citizens to directly decide the matter. So I would be in favor of someone doing the work and putting it on a ballot. But other than that, I don't think it's the city council's job to do that and take away the power of the people.
Counselor Zambudo.
Yeah, I said this has to go to committee by rule. I wasn't going to speak on this. We have a difference of opinion. You think it should be a ballot question. We can discuss that in committee, and that'll be fine. But I disagree with you. You disagree with me. There's a rule here in place, and so that's where we're going with this. Thank you.
Counselor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree to an extent. The optics of this doesn't look good, but where the motion was filed at a very interesting time, but if you think about it, the motion was also filed at the right time because we have all of these people that work for the city or on boards and commissions running for office. So when would we ever be in this situation to even discuss this if it wasn't already happening? And I just, since we're all sharing our thoughts on this, and I know it's going to go to committee, thank you for the leeway. It is a difficult situation, but I could just picture this situation. We have an issue before the council, and we have 6 people, because there are 6 people, at least 6 people, that currently work, currently, yeah, you're right, Councilor. Imagine 8 people win and get on this council, and half of them have to recuse themselves every time a motion comes up, depending on what department it is. And I think about the work that this council needs to get done, and it's a very difficult decision, and I'm looking forward to having more discussion in subcommittee.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Silvestri.
Thank you, Madam President. Everyone has our own opinions on this, and the first night this motion was brought to the table, my colleague to my left, he made it clear that there are stringent ethics laws on the books that he believes are not being followed. So that, in my eyes, should be going to the ethics. And if there's violations being committed, your name should be sent to the ethics board. We shouldn't be blocking people from having a right to run for office. There are rules in place. If you don't follow them, you get brought in front of the ethics board. If you follow them, there's nothing you have to do. But now we're saying that we have to answer to a committee. I just don't see it's fair, but it's going to committee. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? I'm going to refer this to Legislative Affairs.
Calendar item number 24, motion presented by Councilor Novoselsky that the acting mayor request the DPW to install an appropriate historical marker on Winthrop Avenue commemorating the Great Revere train wreck of 1871. This installation was previously approved by the City Council in 2017, but was not completed.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I was contacted by the Revere Historical Group that this was put in 2017, and they never heard anything about it. In following it up, we find out that, it never got past the mayor's office back then. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the DPW that does it. It could be the historical people themselves, as long as the city provides, the funding for it to happen. And Revere is a very historical city, and we want to show it off as much as we can. So I think this is something that we ought to reinstitute and let the acting mayor decide whether or not it will be the DPW that will install it. My own personal feeling is they shouldn't be the ones. But I think let him decide, and then we'll see how much money it costs, and if it's something that's totally out of hand, it'll come back into our hands and to provide some funding for it. So I think we'll let this move and go ahead and see if we can get this this sign put up. Thank you.
Any other councilors? All in favor? All opposed? So ordered. Thank you for your public participation tonight's meeting. The City Council now stands adjourned to meet on Monday, August 28th. I hope you enjoy the remaining of the summer. Thank you. Good night.
Madam President, are we still on?